Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Golfing Greenkeeper podcast. My name is Steve Smith, and I'm your host. And well, you can probably hear it in my voice. I've come a gutser. I'm a little bit crook as a mongrel dog. Have been for the last few days. So it's been a rough couple of days, but no rest for the wicked, as they say, and we've got to keep pumping these episodes out because I know how much you love them. I've been getting plenty of comments and support from everyone saying how much you're enjoying these episodes on the podcast, and some of you, in fact, have caught up, and I've had some messages saying, Steve, we're finished, and we would like some more, please. So here you go. Here's some more. Ladies and gentlemen, this is another episode of John Deere Golf Keeper of the Greens. We're actually doing something very different indeed. This time we're going international, going overseas to the other side of the planet. And it is, in fact, John Deere Golf that I have this fantastic partnership with that allows me to continue these wonderful conversations and bring these insights to you. So excited by our partnership. And of course, you've probably heard me talk about in the past the wonderful GPS sprayers that John Deere have available in the marketplace that are out there and certainly being utilised by a number of golf courses around the country. And I've had some superintendents talk about their equipment in the past where they have these John Deere GPS sprayers in their fleet and how much they just talk about how much they love them. I think the technology is outstanding. It's actually quite incredible if you ask me, and I wish I had this stuff when I was a superintendent. It certainly would have made my life a great deal easier. But the GPS sprayer is something pretty special. And you know what? If you want to elevate your golf course spraying experience, the John Deere Pro Gator GPS Precision Sprayer is what you're looking for. Enjoy effortless operation through their auto track guidance system, enhanced accuracy with individual nozzle control, and the assurance of improved tracking and management of your spraying tasks with their reliable Starfire receiver, where you can track and manage your spraying efforts with confidence. And that's something very special indeed about these GPS sprayers. Now, under the bonnet is a donk and a half. I've got to tell you, you're going to want to make sure you've got a decent power unit under there. And it's a 3-cylinder liquid-cooled diesel engine with 24.7 horsepower. What a beast that is. And you've got to know that you've got something powerful running these systems because you want it reliable and you want it powerful while you're out there doing the job. The auto track guidance system, like I mentioned, is something very special with the individual nozzle control. And you'll hear people that I've spoken to and you'll hear people that you meet that have got these GPS sprayers, and they'll tell you how good these things are. I'm talking about them, obviously, with my partnership with John Deere, so there's no secrets in that. These GPS spray units that John Deere have are unbelievable pieces of equipment. Make sure you check out deere.com.au, DEERE, where you can go and check out more information about the GPS sprayer online through their website, or you can find out where your local dealer is and who that is that you need to get in touch with to go knock on their door. Give them a call and say, hey, I want to know more about these GPS sprayers because we're looking to upgrade. It's time for us to get a new piece of equipment for our spraying gear, and this is what we're considering. So check them out, get in touch with your local dealer, and find out how John Deere can help you look after your golf course better with the wonderful John Deere Pro Gator GPS Precision Sprayers. Ladies and gentlemen, with no further ado, this is episode number 110. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a first. We are not going to a different part of Australia, nor are we going to the far west coast somewhere further around. We are heading to the other side of the planet where we've got an expat Aussie on the line as a superintendent at a golf club in Scotland, and I'll introduce him straight up. Is Superintendent Chris Ray of Orkney Golf Club in Scotland. G'day, mate. How you doing?
G'day, Steve. How's it going, mate?
Mate, very well. Now, mate, this is something a bit different. We've touched on the idea of getting to this one over the last couple of years, I think it's been. And I just missed you because you were over here and now you're back home. And I say home is in Orkney in Scotland. Mate, you had a trip to Australia recently. Tell us a little bit of a bit of an intro of where Orkney is before we get started into the podcast.
Right, so the Orkney Islands are located off the top north coast of Scotland, about 6 miles off the coast. So everyone's probably heard of Shetland, the TV series, The Pony.
Right.
So Shetland's about, I think, 50, 60, 70 miles further north. We're about 6 miles off the top coast, the county of Caithness, off from there. So, it's pretty remote, it's pretty wild, it's pretty windy. It's pretty exposed. It's difficult to get to. There's flights, there's ferries,
Yeah,
there's
wow.
long ferries, short ferries. There's a ferry from Aberdeen.
That's mate, that's unreal. We'll dig into all of that stuff because I want to know a little bit more and just how remote it is and what it's like greenkeeping up there, mate. But as I mentioned, you're an expat Aussie, and that's part of this. I've spoken to a couple of internationals in Australia that are working on golf courses here, such as Fraser Brown over in Lake Carrinyup and a couple of Kiwis, Graham up at Mount Tambourine, and also Glenn Gibson Smith when he was at the Glades and the Gold Coast. So this is a first for me, though. It's an Aussie overseas. So I'm looking for something a little bit interesting here and a little bit different. So we'll learn about your career, mate, as well, along with what you're doing over there at Orkney and mate, the journey. I'm looking forward to this journey as to how you got there. So I think there's going to be a good story in this, mate. But look, let's start off with Steve's Super 7 if you're ready to go. Seven questions. They can be fast or slow answers and some elaboration if you choose now. I've decided there's always some stories in behind some of these back answers. So, mate, let's do it. Number 1, sunrise or sunset?
Yeah, definitely sunrise, as most greenkeepers.
You've got long sunrises being so far north in summertime, do you? How does that go?
Yeah. So we get nearly 24 hours of daylight in the peak of summer.
No way.
The solstice. So on the course, we have a midnight golf challenge. We don't tee off at midnight, but they tee off about 7 o'clock at night. And it used to be a bit of a drinkathon. It was kind of a lot of alcohol was consumed, and people would play 18 holes, and then they'd go into the clubhouse at about 11 o'clock when the round finished up. And
wow.
But it's kind of died a death the last couple of years. But yeah, it used to be a big thing. But
wowee, that's already strange in itself. There you go. Now, number 2, this could be interesting over there in Scotland, and this is your personal preference, just the same. Dogs or no dogs allowed on the golf course? What are your thoughts personally, and maybe what happens over there?
Yeah, so years ago I would have said no dogs, but coming around to it, and it's a bit of a topic over here too. A lot of dogs are allowed. I don't know whether you know, obviously we've all heard of St Andrews, but on a Sunday, St Andrews is just like an open park. You can go and walk your dog wherever you want. So dogs are allowed there all the time. So like I'm on the side of dogs if they're on a lead, if their owners are responsible, they're not let off to go and run around, chase balls, as long as they picked up any poo and that sort of stuff, then crack at. Our club doesn't allow them, although I wish we did. But that's their prerogative. Yep. So but yeah, I'm definitely on the side of dogs. If that gets more people to play the game, then brilliant.
Yeah, sure. No, very good, mate. Number 3, stripes or no stripes on fairways? And you've done a little bit of work around a few different places now and seen lots of stuff, mate. So what are your thoughts?
Yep. So I haven't been in the industry as long as I have. We were, the late 90s, early 2000s. It was stripes, all the sort of stuff, and 50-50 was kind of that's a bit bland, but when I started at Orkney here, I used the checkerboard, and then I kind of realised, what the natural side's better. So I prefer the box cut now, the 50-50. Light and dark is what I go for, and I think it reveals a golf course. It's not so busy. It doesn't catch your eye. It lets the golf course be itself. It doesn't. Stripes don't overtake. Stripes work. I stripe up my tees, and we cut which we use pedestrians with, and we use pedestrians on our greens. And when you give them a hit of iron and get them up green, you want those stripes looking nice. But fairways, I think 50-50. And then what we do with us, we do a perimeter cut the opposite way with the semi-rough mower.
Yep.
The first cut of rough, we do it the opposite way. So what it does, it really highlights and makes the fairway stand out a lot more.
Yep, and it shows you the definition of roughly where the border of the fairway is into the rough with that line and colour difference. So that's cool. I like that one. I don't think I've heard that one before. There you go. That's good.
Yep.
Number 4, painted hole lips or not painted?
We don't do it purely down to budget. And we only change holes about twice a week, so we're not busy. Sometimes it's maybe once a week. We're not that busy, so I don't need to. So I've read a bit into it, and I've spoken to a lot of other head greenkeepers, course managers, supers, whatever. And if you're changing holes every day, it works. If you're not, they become pretty tatty, and I think the paint starts to kind of strip. And so look, if it works for one club, yep, absolutely do it. If you're changing holes every day, I've done them for tournaments back in Sydney, but no, not something I do. But on the fence really. If you can do it, do it. If not, then yeah.
Yeah, no, that's cool. That as I say with these answers, there's no right or wrongs. It's just insight to see what people's preferences are, and we compare with ourselves, and certainly the audience does as well. Number 5, your favourite grass variety. Now, I don't know if this might have changed since going to Scotland. I'm a bit curious here.
Yeah, I was actually just listening to a few of the podcasts recently of yours, and I even though I've been over here for 17 years, I still go with Santa Ana.
That's gold. I love it. That's fantastic.
You can just do anything you want to it. You can't kill it.
That's gold.
I remember, Santa Ana. So over here, we're kind of more predominantly like fairways, bent and fescues, and greens are bent and fescue tees, etc. So, and they're lovely. They're good grasses to work with, and you get it really fine. But for Santa Ana, what you can do to it, you've got to respect that.
Yes, indeed. It allows you to do a lot more with it, and you can bring a lot more out of it, I think, and how tough it is. But it works over here, obviously, in Australia and in our climate a lot more as well. So, no, good answer, mate. Good answer. Good to see it's travelled to the other side of the world, that thought.
I actually photos of Santa Ana of its like scarified and brown. I show it to people over here, and they're like, "No way, no, you can't be doing that." Yeah. Throw a bag of urea on, and 10 days later, it's lush green.
Yes, indeed. Now, number 6, and I don't really apologise here. This is all an Australian option, a preferred style of golf course. There's no Scottish ones in here, mate, and I'm sure that'd take the cake if it was. The preferred style of golf course, what's your pick here? New South Wales, and there's probably a little bit of an asterisk there because it's just the newly renovated New South Wales Golf Club and the beautiful cliffs here in Sydney. Royal Adelaide, as we know, the fantastic historic golf course that there is in Adelaide, or I should say, Joondalup, the resort-style wild terrain that's been used so well in Joondalup over there in Perth and WA. Mate, what's your preference there out of those 3?
Oh, right. So New South I know quite well because I'm still good friends with Mark Parker. So I got a tour there last month January when I was home with him and around the new works.
So you've seen the new stuff. It's just been opened.
Yeah, I know. It opened at the weekend, so I've seen it, and I've played the existing, the previous layout a couple of years ago as well. So I've seen it in both, and it looks phenomenal, and I can't wait to get to play it sometime soon. It's a great site. Royal Adelaide, Joondalup. I don't know much about Joondalup. I've only been to Perth once, so I've never played it. I've seen it on telly as a kid, in the 90s. Royal Adelaide, I'm going to go with Royal Adelaide because I am an ex-Adelaide born and kind of bred, so I'm going sentimental, and I'm going to say Royal Adelaide. I just love it. I loved it. They had the Australian Open in '98, and I want to get there and play it.
Unreal.
I need to get there. So I hope Parker doesn't listen to this because he'll never talk to me again. But,
Well, I hope he does because I'm trying to get him on the podcast, actually. That's another story for another time. So I might need a little bit of help there.
Yeah, I'll twist his arm, don't worry.
Very good, mate. Great answer. Great. And you know what? That's becoming popular. I actually thought New South Wales might give that a run for its money. And all I'm hearing is so many people don't really know much about Joondalup, which to me says a lot about we don't talk about Perth enough and WA. But that's another story. Mate, good answer. Number 7, the final one. Which golf course in Australia would you like to visit tomorrow and why? And maybe you've just answered that a little bit. It could be for sentimental reasons. It could be reasons you're interested in something you haven't seen before that you know about or have heard about. Mate, is there anyone in Australia that for any reason you want to visit?
Yeah, there's one. It's quite easy. It's an easy choice for me. It's the National down on the Mornington Peninsula. So the Robert Trent Jones Jr. one. So
yes.
That's the first one built there in 1988, I think. You see photos of it and you just like the site looks amazing. It's just funky. It's almost upside down. It looks brilliant. I remember as a kid, my brother going down there to play like mid 90s or so and taking photos, and I was about 10 or 11, 12, and looking at these photos, just going, what the hell is this place? This place looks awesome. And so I've never been there, and I would love, so if anyone's listening, give us a game next time I'm back. I would really appreciate it. It'd make me happy. But like, I've been to the Sandbelt, I've been to, the good courses in Sydney, and I would love to get to the National.
Oh, wow. You know what? That's the first. No one's ever mentioned the National before, mate. So that's a really interesting answer. Good answer. I'm sure people will go and have a look if they don't know it very well. They're probably curious as to know why you've picked that one, mate. Good choice. Very good choice.
Yep.
So thank you, Chris, mate. They're great responses and certainly going to be interesting for people to have a look and see compare it with themselves and see what they think, mate. So I really appreciate that. Now, Let's start to hear a little bit about your story, mate, because you just dropped something there and said that you've been over there in Scotland for 17 years, born in Adelaide, and I know you've done a lot of time in Sydney, so I don't really know your full story after having added those little dots up. Mate, you can walk us through, if you can, please, as to your greenkeeping career, how you got into it, and then also, obviously, the trek and maybe what's involved when you get to Orkney. We'll talk a little bit in detail about that because I want to know more. But, mate, please take us through your greenkeeping career, how you got into it, and how you got to Orkney where you are now.
Yep, no worries. So I started at Pennant Hills in the northern suburbs of Sydney back in September 98 when I was 16. Same thing, like a lot of greenkeepers, school wasn't for me. Sat in the classroom, stared out the window, didn't listen, usual kind of stuff. So, I was very fortunate. My mum saw an ad in the Sydney Morning Herald back then, had to check the newspapers, and there was a groundsman job going at Pennant Hills, and got down to the interview stage. I think there was 4 or 5 of us, interview with Richard Kirkby, and initially I wasn't successful when he picked someone else. And I was pretty gutted about that because I used to love grass. Like, even I used to sit on the porch and watch Dad mow the lawn. It was it was weird, like, just a freak. And so I didn't get gutted. And then that week, about a week later, Richard phoned me and he says, "Oh, look, the other guy only lasted 4 days. Wasn't for him. You and the next on the list. Do you want the jobs?" Yeah, brilliant, magic. Wow. Thanks very much. So. Yeah, but that was I remember it was a Friday afternoon, and I'd been at school and literally started work on the Monday. Phoned up school on the Monday. Mum phoned school and back. So, so I started on the Monday and just went from there. Was at Pennant Hills for about 16 months maybe. As I was 16, 17, got up, and it was really good. It was close to home. I lived 10 minutes away from. I grew up in the area, and Hills was always the that's the I grew up in the Pennant Hills area. That was the course. That was the one you wanted to. I drove past it so many times and looked at it and spoke to my dad and my uncle who played it, and I just wanted to get there. So to be able to end up working now, so this is awesome. And then just was blown away. Had a great team there. Richard was in charge. Mark Warwick was 2IC. Paul Gumbleton was 3IC. Guys like Ryan Fury was there. Who was an old family friend of ours, NSW Ryan. So was there a few months. Didn't want to do anything else. The 4:30 alarm clock, alarm clocks didn't put me off. And then Richard had kind of taken on about 3 or 4 of us young guys, and he realised he wouldn't send us all to TAFE. So he was a bit of a conundrum. So he phoned around a few clubs in Sydney. And Concord Mark was taking on looking for two groundsmen, apprentices, whatever. So because I'd done 18 or 16 months already, I went down, had a meeting with Mark. What was that, 1999? Just right before Christmas. And the job's yours if you want it. And I didn't know what to do. I'm like, I knew Concord and you would have had the PGA in the early 90s. And I'm like, this could be a great chance. But I was comfortable at Penno, so I'm like... And I remember phoning Mark up and I literally still hadn't made my mind up, and I just went, okay, I'll take it. Just take the take the risk. It's first. Didn't have a car, didn't have a license, get the train, ride a bike, whatever to get there. So I did all that. So I took the move to Concord. It was Christmas 99, I think. And so I ended up doing my apprenticeship there under Mark and Chris and Kaz and those sort of guys. And it was a step up from Penno. It was another league. It was different. Mark, it was intense. And after about 6 months, could go home crying, wanting to leave and going, this is too much, But I want to go back to Penno. But no, I stuck it out. Mark was really good. If you're along for the ride with Mark, then he'll take you and support you and do everything you want. So did my apprenticeship there, went to Ride TAFE, did that 4 years on, worked bloody hard. We had a couple of tournaments. We had the Australian Ladies Open in 2004. We had another tournament in 2001, the ANZ Tour Championship. Peter Lollard won that. So to get tournament experience was awesome. And to see it on your own course it's fine to go and volunteer at one, but to have it on your own course it's special. It's really, you create good memories and make good friends out of that and contacts. And so I did that for, I think I was there 5 years, nearly 5 years, and kind of finished my time. I was qualified, carried on working. It was still tough. There was a lot of overtime. We did one thing I loved about it. We did our own construction, so we learned so many skills on site. We had Miles coming along all the time. He was there. Just all sorts. You experienced everything. You got hands on. We did concrete pathways. You just got so much hands on work, irrigation. Everything. So I did that for 5 years, and then I kind of wanted to go into the golf construction side. And Mark, being director of Eclectic Golf at the time, which he'd started with his previous assistant Chris Beard and Miles, he offered me a job there. There was only 4 of us on site plus Mark, a director. So went into golf construction. We did a lot of work at Avondale, Cromer, Bankstown, Roseville. Probably various other jobs I can't really think of. So what was that, 2004? Did golf construction, and that's where I got into excavators, and that I just love being an excavator. I still do now. I still love playing, building bunkers and doing drainage or tees or whatever. So I got into that side of things. So first job we were on was I was on down at Cromer rebuilding that, and we were there for months. Loved it. So 2004. So there was massive alterations going on, like holes were being redirected and there was massive ponds being put in, and we redid all the stormwater that was underneath that was pipes. Right. We did stormwater from the pond up in the corner. That we made that. Well, I'd call it a burn now, but it's a creek. So we did that creek all the way through in front of the 18th, I think it was, and cuts through. So we did all that sort of stuff. So that was great exposure to those sorts of construction techniques. So I was there about 2 years maybe doing that, 2 years. And then the company ceased trading. Chris wanted out, and Mark got out, and Miles went off on his own. Miles asked me to go and work with him, but after 2 years, I'm like, I kind of wanted to get back to greenkeeping, and being sitting there on a digger and watching the guys out on mowers, and I'm like, what I fancy going back. So we were working at Avondale at the time. We did the sub-air system at Avondale on the 11th or 12th, the one the par 3 that crosses over the driveway as you drive into Avondale. Yep. So we did the sub-air. We were the first, as far as I know, we were the first ones to install it in Oz. So we did that, which was a great experience, great kind of thing to get your head around what this thing does. So, we'd done a lot at Avondale, predominantly the back nine. I think we were doing 14, 16, 18. Yeah, we did a lot of work there. So I got to know Dave, Tim, Gareth, a lot of those guys there. I got to know them really well. I ended up, so the company ceased, and Dave took me on as a greenkeeper, so I ended up working at Avondale for 9 months, lived in the flat. There's a flat above the clubhouse. It's gone now. Lived in the flat there for 6 months. So that was a great money saver. That was like no fuel, no rent. It was like $50 a week rent. That included all your bills. It was like magic. How was this? So just raked in the cash, put it all away. It was there for about 9 months, and then I didn't know. I was kind of up in the air for a bit, so I still kept in touch with Mark and that. So I actually ended up going back to Concord back end of 2006, I think. Back end of 2006, went back to Concord, had to move out of the flat, had all this cash. So, I bought a flat down at Ryde, and that was kind of handy, just getting across to Concord. Went back to Concord, was there for about 2 years, and we did a bit more construction, and I enjoyed it. And then, 2007, I met my now wife, who's Scottish and from Orkney, so the story will lead on. Met her in 2007. So we were together for about a year. Her visa ran out in 2008, so she was coming back here, and I says, "Oh, well, yeah, you know what? I was 26, I think, 26, and I was like, where do I go?" Yeah, Concord was kind of. They still had the 3 assistants there, and I'm like, where do I go? I can't. Those guys are set.
Yep.
They were trying to get other supers jobs around. They wanted to get out and get a supers job. It was just a hard time to get a supers job, I think. So I'm like, I can't see myself going anywhere here. Yeah, bugger it, take the risk, go to Scotland. So took the risk, came to Scotland, and then that was 2008, and didn't initially go into greenkeeping. I was actually out of greenkeeping for 5 years on golf courses anyway. So I moved over here and was working in construction, just road construction for 3 months. No, 6 months. 6 months. And I remember middle of winter 2008, building these new roads, a civil engineering company, middle of December and January, dark depths of winter, 6 hours of daylight a day. It was pretty grim. And then been stuck on a road roller. So stuck on this roller with no cab. And these boys, they're all out, for the ones that I could understand what the hell they were saying. So I was sitting on this road roller, just rolling up and down. These boys in their JCBs, heaters on. One of the boys turns to me and he goes, "Here, mate, chuck this on." I'm like, "What's this?" And he goes, "It's called a survival suit." I'm like, "Oh, right." Okay. I said, "What's this do?" And he goes, "It'll keep you warm." I was like, "Rightio." That's the sort of thing you're getting off. You got your gloves. You get off every 15, 20 minutes, put your gloves over the exhaust. To warm your hands up,
that's a good old trick. Yeah, we used to do that a lot in the mountains.
Yep, jump back on and away you went. And you'd go into they have what they call the peace room. You'd call a smoko room, be like a demountable hut. So you'd go in there for your smoko, and you'd be like, the guys, they'd be having a chat, talking about football, soccer, or whatever, and they'd be having a conversation. It was like watching a game of tennis. I didn't understand a bloody thing, but you were just watching it across the room. You're just like, mate, I haven't got a clue what you guys are saying, but anyway, crack on. So did that for about 6 months, and then it got to summer here, and I got asked to go and work for a lawn mowing company. I was like, you know what, yeah, rightio, fair enough. I didn't know how long I was going to stay. Yeah, rightio. So I mowed lawns for about 4 months. It was okay. I don't like that domestic side of it where you're just rushing. Yeah. It's all a money grab, and it's just, I want to take my time and do the best job. If I've got to mow it again to make it look better, I want to do that, but that's not what it's about. They're getting this much for this lawn and that much for that. You just, bash them out, and I'm just, nah, don't like this. Weeding gardens, and it wasn't for me. So I did that, and then because of I'd only had a year visa, so I'd had a return flight booked anyway to come back to Oz end of 2009. So I came back to Oz. I'd just come back for 4, 5, 6 weeks. But before I left, there was a job advertised. There's a castle estate here in Orkney called Balfour Castle, and new people had just bought it at the beginning of the year, and they were just spending millions on it, so lots of money. There was word of golf course getting built. There was, this, that, and the other, and so they were refurbing this castle. They had a job advertised for a gardener. So, I'll go for that. It was coming up to winter. I didn't have a job when I got back from Australia, so got the job. So I ended up working in this castle. I ended up there for 3 years.
Wow!
And what it is, so they had the grounds, they had the gardens, the grounds. Then they have what they call Victorian walled gardens, which is where they grow back in the Victorian times. So this castle was built in 1847, I think. On the estate, they had the Victorian walled gardens where they grew the fruit and veg for the castle. So they had gardeners, and it's all this like streamlined, laid out kind of plots. And so I ended up working in there and a bit on the grounds, hedge cutting. I got them to purchase a John Deere triple, the 2653B, the John Deere, we call it a surrounds mower.
Yep.
And so they've got the big formal lawn, which used to be like a croquet lawn back in the day. So I ended up, it was all pretty tatty. There was a lot of moss and stuff in it, a lot of weeds. So I ended up getting the skills out and getting stuck into it and striping it up, and had it checkerboarded, and it just looked beautiful. And the owners, I remember, because the owners didn't live there, they lived down in England, so they would come up sporadically through the year.
Of course. I mean, it makes sense to buy a castle as a holiday home, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, they're from Shropshire. So they had their private jets, and it was the proper tweed jackets.
What?
And
Wow.
Oh yeah. So they've got money. This place was worth a couple of million. So pounds.
Just a house in Sydney.
Yeah, pretty much. But if you go remote in Scotland, you can afford that.
Yeah.
So, but yes, so I got to meet them. They're a lovely family and that. But so what they have over here as well, they have shooting estates. So this was a shooting estate. So it was more birds. So pheasants, partridge. I was going to say peacocks there, but no peacocks were shot.
That'd make the news, wouldn't it?
So, it would be in the news. Woodcock, pigeons. If it was snowy, then the pigeons would come out. You'd be able to shoot them. We didn't have any grouse. There's no grouse in Orkney. So that's quite a common thing. You've maybe seen it on TV or skit shows is always a good thing over here. Like, the posh accent and the tweed jackets and the
gun and
the 12.
Yep.
The 12-bore shotgun and that sort of stuff. So that was that kind of vibe. So they used to get through the shooting season, which is, I think is it August or September through till about February. So that was the winter time. So we were quiet. Obviously the grass wasn't growing. So we used to go on. They used to have people come up and there'd be shooting parties stay. And these people are minted. They were from Italy, France. We had the owner of Cartier watches who was billionaire. Yep, coming along and you're just like, g'day, mate. How's it going? Yeah, I'm from Australia. Yeah.
You reckon you were struggling with the Scottish accent in the smoko room? I wonder what they were thinking when you started talking.
Yeah. I think you get a few blank looks and they'd throw you 20 quid and go, here you go, peasant. So what we were doing. So what you do, with that shooting is, because they've got the woods, so in Orkney there's not many trees, right? So when they built this castle, they planted a whole forest of sycamore trees and there's fir trees and all sorts of stuff. So, and the pheasants get released into the woods, and then there's other bits around ponds, so there's ducks and geese and that. So we do what we call the beating. So what we do, the guns would be out, the people with the guns would be out in the field, right? Which on the edge of the trees. So we go through the woods collecting the pheasants. So it's like lambs to the slaughter, mate. It's like, so you're forcing the pheasants out. So the pheasants get to the point, and they're lazy. Pheasants are lazy, right? So they get up and they get to the edge of the woods, and then they're I'm going to fly. So they fly off. So lo and behold, there's 8 12-bore shotguns sitting there ready and waiting for them. So,
anyone with a weak stomach might not really understand or appreciate this one, but that's okay.
Yeah. So I did that for a couple of years, and so we're a few pheasants light in the world because of me. But anyway, so
I don't mean to laugh, but I suppose shooting's not a thing really in Australia so much for a sport. But I probably, and I'm not a big fan of shooting as a sport, but I fish. My father does fishing, and I suppose, and that's a big culture in Australia. So I assume for in a different way, it's kind of like fishing, right? It's just what they do over there in the UK. They shoot.
Yep. They shoot. So it's not such a big thing in Orkney. Well, we've got a bit of a geese problem here. The Canadian geese, they're on that flight path from one place to another, and Orkney's a stopping point. So a lot of the farmers' fields are getting ploughed and chewed up because of these geese. So they've actually allowed them. I could be wrong on this. There is a local law, because there's a lot of companies now that have started up, and they're doing geese shooting out on the fields to protect the farmers. Right. To protect. Yep. They're becoming a problem.
Like cockatoos here, just different.
Yep. So, So sorry. Yeah, I was back at that castle. So I was at the castle first summer there. We actually planted a maize.
Oh wow.
Called Hebe maize. It was a really weird job for 3 years. You're just doing stuff that I'd never done before. It was really weird. And the owner was just eccentric, and he'd come up with these harebrained ideas. And it's like, okay, well, we've got to do it. He wants us to do it. So we got to do it. I built this massive arch-clocked water feature. I laboured for the mason. This thing was huge. There was topiary ball trees that he'd bought mature that were about 1,000-pounder tree, and he had 30 of them come up, and we went, it's too windy. They're not going to survive. Don't worry, put them in.
And if they don't survive, we'll deal with it later. Yep. I've been there and done that. Weirdly enough, yes, eccentric is the right word.
Yeah, so we planted this maize. There was 3,500 hebe plants we put in. We had to ball them in. And before that, there was like 30, 40, 40, 50 foot fir trees taken out. So it's full of tree roots. So we had to dig it, turn it over. And yeah, just this random that we did. I'm thankful for it because I learned a few new things, and
Sure.
I can say I did it completely out with golf, and I don't regret it. I loved it. I still got to work with grass. There was a wee golf hole we had there where I mowed a golf green in, and so the sons of the owners who were in their early 20s, late teens, they were sporty, they were cricketers and golfers and all sorts. So they could come up in their summer holidays, and it was a bit like the royal family going to Balmoral in the summer holidays.
Unreal.
Yeah, so that was 3 years. So what was that, 2012? Yeah, and then the job came up for the head greenkeeper. We call it kind of head greenkeeper, course manager over here. Came up in the end of 2012. Came up for the local course here. There's a couple of courses here in Orkney, but Kirkwall and Orkney Golf Club, where I'm at, is the main one in the main town, Kirkwall. So it came up, and I lived in the town. So it came up, and I applied for the job and got the job, and that was the start of 2013. 12 years later, I'm just past 12 years. I'm still here now. So
wow, hey, mate, what a story! It's a different way of life over there in Orkney. Like I said, it's hearing the shooting. So I like to hear what different places do in sport, and there's the community and what they get up to, and obviously in the UK it is very different to Australia, and I suppose some of that is the climate and what goes on there, and people owning castles, and that's all wild stuff. It sounds so different to here, but mate, very, very interesting. And I'm interested in and I'm going to step through some of the things there that you mentioned, but because of the way that we're recording, if I jump in, it cuts your audio out, so I can't even say stuff. So, but that's okay. Your time you mentioned there with Mark Parker at Concord and being pretty full on in terms of like a next level, and he delivers very, very high end quality golf courses. And he's very professional in what he does. I mean, he goes to Augusta, I think, as well, and every year goes over there and is part of the team for Augusta for the prep for the Masters. So interesting that you got into the construction side of things. You mentioned you really liked that side of it, and you did a lot of work at Cromer. Cromer's not far from where I am. Did you did some of that for a time? Do you miss doing that? How you'd said that you'd done it for a couple of years and you kind of then missed your greenkeeping. Do you get an opportunity to do some of that now where you are, or being smaller in-house? I don't know. How much do you like going back to some of that work at all?
Yeah, so I actually get to do we do quite a bit at Orkney Golf Club. When I started in 2013, the course was just a bit dated. A lot of the bunkers were maybe hand dug with a spade back in the 70s or 80s. They're kind of we're very small. We're on the bottom end of golf courses we're talking here. My budget's, if I put it in Aussie dollars, it's probably less than 200K. That includes wages.
Wow.
Yeah. So we produce, I'm the full-time. I've got an assistant, Laura, who's actually worked in New South Wales. That's how I know her, because through Mark, she'd worked in New South Wales. So she's from England originally. She'd worked at a couple other courses in England, or one in Scotland, one in England. So there's myself and a couple other labourers, summer workers, whatever. We can talk about that later.
Yep.
So I do get to do a good bit of construction work. So my first summer, and I went, right, this bunker needs to be rebuilt, and they all they were a bit sceptical. I don't think they knew maybe what my background was and my skill set. And no worries, we did it in a week, and I think I maybe proved one or two people wrong, and we did it in a week, and cool, let's do it. And then from there we just grew, and we got onto more bunkers, and I kind of build them in the style. Well, we've got an architect called Stuart Rennie, so he came up and he went, they're very sandbelty, and he'd worked in Melbourne. He's Scottish.
Okay.
He worked for Peter Thompson.
Oh wow!
So he's like, they're very sandbelty, so you don't get much of that in Scotland, especially this far north. And I went, and that's why I love it, because we're like no one else. No one else has what we have this far north anyway. A lot of revetted bunkers or pop bunkers or that kind of 60s, 70s, 80s style. So, or the newer kind of resort style courses, with the big tongues and that. Yep. But, we kind of bash out a few bunkers a year. And then, so I'll rattle off some numbers. I think in the 12 years we've either filled in or rebuilt or built new bunkers. I think we've done 31. We've done 11 tees. We did 2 full greens rebuilds in 2020 on the back end of COVID. I can talk about that later. We've done ditch rebuilds like burns, which were kind of like farmers' ditches with just big V ditches and just quite ugly straight lines. So we naturalised them and that sort of stuff and got the water flow changing and made them aesthetically fit into a golf course technically, rather than looking like a farmer's just come in and done it. And gorse removal and that sort of stuff. So, so I that's why I enjoy what I do, because I still get to do my greenkeeping, still get the course looking mint during the summer season and Friday afternoon. You know what? Like, no matter what standard of course you work at, like whether you're top end, you're at the Aussie Australian Golf Club or you're at your local country course, there's no better feeling than on a Friday afternoon and everything's cut. It's still the best feeling. Doesn't matter what level you're at. It's just awesome.
Yep.
And that's what I still love. But having worked at 3 top courses, being at the lower end now, I still love it. Yeah, I wouldn't change it.
Yep. No, that's very impressive. So it sounds like that doing that time in the construction side has been very helpful to your career. Is kind of one of the things I was sort of working towards, is that that experience gained in that break away from greenkeeping into construction has been good for you later on, whether you knew it or not. How good is that, knowing that you're out there doing it now, and you still get a bit of a buzz from doing it as well on the course that you're super at, which is great. No, I thoroughly I still say to Mark now. I still catch up with Mark regularly, and I still thank him for giving me that opportunity to go and work for Eclectic and learning new skills and learning off guys who are the same as him. We were mad. Like, we were 7 in the morning we started, and you just if you wanted to go home at 3, you felt bad for asking if you had a dentist appointment or something. You worked on, but it was hard work, and there were times when I didn't want to do it, but you get through it, and you have a bad day, you go home, have a beer or whatever, and you just forget about it. And So Concord, you mentioned Pennant Concord. There's a lot of good quality golf there, New South Wales for a time, and you've experienced lots of good stuff in Sydney. And I hear that then you go to Scotland and you're doing the work that you're doing. How was that culture shock, in a sense, of going back there and getting... I suppose you had a bit of a lead time in hearing your story there about learning a bit of the culture before you got into golf. So you kind of probably knew a little bit more about society and things over there and started to get used to stuff before you got into the golf side of it. It wasn't just a straight up shock, because I imagine that they do golf a little bit differently over there, because all parts of the world do golf differently. I know in Japan, certainly, they do golf differently. They take more time with it. They think about golf differently to we do in Australia. It's just like pumping out your round. And if anyone's slow in front of us, you're in the road, get out of the way. And we don't really appreciate what's it like over there in that realm of being greenkeeping to what it was like over here greenkeeping. You know what it's like dealing with players and golfers and members and things like that. How different is it over there? Is it much different at all?
In terms of dealing with golfers, probably not that different. Like, I'm a member at my club and I play golf and get to know the members. In terms of the way they play the game, not much different. Still get frustrated by the slow golfer or greens. What are they stimping at? You just rattle off a number and they'll never know the difference. But yeah, they're just. I think it's not too dissimilar.
Okay.
Maybe the way the game's, because of the variety of grasses with your Benson, your fescues and your finer stuff everywhere, and maybe a bit more windier here in Scotland, like a lot of links courses obviously by the coast. My place is windy as hell. The strongest wind we've had in Orkney in my time here was 138 miles an hour, so over 200k. That was through a night. That was a winter. Wow. I wasn't out changing holes around. It was the middle of So we can have comps and the wind will be 70, 80 Ks. And so that's a rare one in the summer. But even in the winter with the winter leagues, we don't have comps in the winter here. Where we are, then there's winter leagues. So they just run themselves. They have their own kind of admin and stuff. And
okay.
They're all playing the summer. And then if you're hardy enough, you'll play the winter. So in terms of the golf, not much different really. It's going back to the grass varieties. I guess maybe more your link style of golf, the way you play golf. You're more maybe your bump and runs sorts of shots, and you're keeping the ball low and keep it out of the wind. Not so much flop and wedge stuff over here.
Yeah, okay.
Watch the American golf on TV, and it just irks me the way that's just flow to the pin and magic soft greens. And because of my court, I don't have irrigation. We can't control the greens.
You what?
So, yep, mate, my irrigation is a 2,000-litre tank on the back of a trailer with a 3-inch pump that I pump and suck out of the quarry, which is our water feature on the course, which isn't very big. I suck out that, go and water it. I've got a hand reel, tow it behind the tractor, got a hand reel, go and water. You'll get maybe 500 litres on a green, go into the next one. And then you'd get about, if you go over twice, you'll get maybe 4 greens done, then you're going to go and reload. And,
wow.
It's different.
That's wild. So okay, yeah, I'll continue on wherever we were. That's just blowing my head apart.
So going back to the golf side, so for my course predominantly, like a lot of courses in Scotland have their own irrigation, even if it's just greens irrigation with 4 pop-ups. A lot of courses don't. Even in England, a lot of courses don't. It's so we can't control what our greens are going to do for the summer. So that's what I love it. I actually love it. The start of the season, April, greens are still soft coming out of winter. May, maybe a little bit softer. If we get a dry spell, we had a dry spell 2 years ago. We had 3 weeks with not one drop of rain. And you think, Scotland, it rains all the time. Yeah, it generally does. But Sydney gets twice as much rain as we do where I am. We just get more rainy days.
Yep.
So because I can't control the greens, it's only really once they start going purple that I get the water tank out, which last year I didn't need it at all. I didn't use it. We had quite a wet summer, whereas 2018, 2022, 2020, 2023, we had quite dry summers. So I had a second tank on the go. So I had 2 IBC tanks, have to go and hire a pump from the local kind of hardware, McGregor's, which is probably like a Kennards or something.
McGregor's, yeah, I can. Perfect name.
Yeah, so they're a bit of a chain in the north of Scotland. Anyway, so we'll get the other pump on the go and have 2 of us watering greens, and I'll go out at 4 a.m. and try and get most of them done before the golfers are out. But they don't tend to start golf here too early where I am, like playing in the morning, so they'll be like 8 o'clock. There's no one really out till
they're not hanging on dawn of sunrise, sunbreak at 5 o'clock going, get out of the road, we want to play golf.
No, it's weird.
So that's the difference. That's what I'm talking about. How is that? That is something that is quite different to us.
So when I started, they have what they call a card draw. So we didn't have, because the club's small, we don't have any clubhouse staff. So I don't have a pro shop. I don't have a general manager. I don't have a secretary. So the club's run by volunteers. It's run by the committee. They do a fantastic job. They're running a business with employees, and they have no experience doing it. So they do a great job. So they used to do card draws. So the first one was at 1 o'clock, like lunchtime. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I've got the course ready to go at 8. Like, what's going on? Greens are cut, bunkers are done, crack out. Yeah, but anyway, so I eventually got them down that we now have the card draw at 9 o'clock in the morning and 9. But with COVID, we had to make an online booking system. So now they just log in and book online, and it's cool. So now it's away they go at 9 o'clock. So I don't have the 7 a.m. 6:30, the putting green full and you can't cut it. I don't have that scenario, which is great. It's really relaxed. It makes my job a little easier and less stressful, although I do stress, and anyone that's worked for me will laugh at this because I stress over the little things. So going back to that, because of the daylight, mate, my course from 4:30 in the afternoon until 6 on a Wednesday, men's day, it's can't get on. It's chock-a-block. 6 o'clock. Last group's teeing off at 6:30 at night.
Wow.
6:30, 6:45. Yeah. So what that does. So your retired guys or your guys on shift work can play to 9 o'clock. Guys who are firemen or whatever, they may be working. They start at 1, so they maybe can play to 9 a.m. and then they've got to go to work after that. Whereas the 4:30, all the trade guys and the business workers can still get their midweek round of golf in.
Yeah, wow. Okay, that's different. That's interesting.
Yeah, so like it's brilliant for me because it means that the course is busiest when we're not there. So
Yeah. That's a good thing, right? It's a very good thing. It means you, especially with a smaller crew, it's allowing you the time that you need. You've got that time without having to stress over people on your hammer about getting out of the road and getting things done. Which it's And look, I've been doing my bit of homework ever since we've been talking about over the last couple of years. I suppose we've been trying to get to this point of doing it. So every now and then I have a look and I go, where's Orkney? What's it like up there? And I want to try and get into a little bit of the detail of the golf course. So I'm going to throw some things out there to make it relative for people in Australia to try and understand a little bit. And you can add the detail in, if you don't mind, mate, about the weather patterns and you touched on with wind. So you're 60 degrees north in latitude. And looking at that in relative terms to Australia, it's Hobart and Tassie are our furthest south in the main part of Australia. It's equal to what is kind of like another hour flight south of Hobart if you were to go that way by plane. So you're miles north. Like it's so far up the top end where it's cold, which would be like a lot of people consider Hobart a long way south. So it's a lot further down towards the equivalent is 60 degrees latitude. So I was really surprised that it was so far away, and then looking into Europe and looking at Norway and Sweden and all those sorts of Scandinavian countries, they go even further north, right? Which is blows my mind, where they get minus 30 degrees and minus 40 degrees and all sorts of stuff in wintertime. So you're a long way north. You mentioned winds earlier on. Tell us a little bit about how different that landscape is. And you touched on some of those things, talking about your time working at the castle and so on, with no trees in the local area. It sounds somewhat desolate in a sense, of like a really stark landscape.
Yeah. So I'll maybe just talk a bit about Orkney itself, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're further north. We're further north than the southern tip of Norway, if that makes sense. So we're quite far north.
Yep.
Yeah, so southern tip of Norway further south than us if you're going around the globe. So we're very remote. So to get to Orkney, you've got flight. It's an hour flight on like a 50-seater from Edinburgh, Glasgow, Aberdeen, Inverness. It's about 25 minutes to Inverness, about 35, 40 minutes to Aberdeen, an hour to Edinburgh or Glasgow. We used to have direct flights to Bergen in Norway, like only in the summer, and like once a week or twice a week or something. But I think they've stopped that. Then they were doing direct to Manchester. They've stopped that. But so we're serviced pretty well. There's the 6-hour ferry from Aberdeen to Orkney, and then it keeps going to Shetland. So it's about 6 hours. Gets in about 11 o'clock at night, then it goes overnight up to Shetland. Or I think Shetland have a direct one as well. So that's 14 hours on a ferry from Aberdeen direct to Shetland. But there's cabins, there's a bar, there's a restaurant, there's cinemas, there's all sorts of stuff. So that's from Aberdeen. If not, you drive to the northern tip of Scotland, which most people would probably have heard of John O'Groats. Which is the most northern tip of Britain.
I've heard of John O'Groats, sorry to jump in, I've only heard of John O'Groats because I know nothing about that part of the world, in a song by The Darkness. There you go. That's a random one.
The Darkness, yeah. There you go. Or you've maybe heard of Land's End to John O'Groats. So that's, people do it as a charity. Like they drive it, they cycle it, they run it, they walk it. So southern tip of Britain to John O'Groats, the most northern tip of, top to bottom they call it. Yeah.
Right.
So we've got 2 passenger ferries that go across what they call the Pentland Firth. And Pentland Firth, I think it is the most dangerous portion of water in the world. It's 6 miles across. Someone only swam it for the first time ever, maybe about 8-10 years ago. Because of the tides, it's brutal. Like it can get choppy.
Wow, okay.
There's a cargo ship that sunk about 5 or 6 years ago, and there was about 8 crew on board, and they were all perished. But one of the Orkney ferries noticed that the hull of the boat bobbing up and down in the water, and then they went to it. And it's sad, but that's life up here. So we get 2 ferries across, and they take about an hour and a half across. And then it's about, so from the top of Scotland, if you drive to Edinburgh, it's about a 6-7 hour drive. We don't so if you go from top of Scotland to Inverness, it's about 2.5 hours, but it's just one lane each way. and then Inverness is dual carriageway all the way to Edinburgh, pretty much. Orkney. I live in the town of Kirkwall. So Kirkwall, where my wife grew up on the main street, Kirkwall's about 8,000 people. All of Orkney, the population's about 22,000 people. There's 70 islands and about 22 are inhabited, I think. So we go back to the Neolithic times. So there's a tourist site called Skara Brae. It was discovered in the 1800s, I think 1870s, maybe 1850s. A huge storm exposed a beach and they found these Neolithic buildings, and since then archaeologists have been all over Orkney, and there's all sorts of archaeology all over Orkney. Orkney's huge for archaeology, and it's students and all sorts of stuff. So they still do, like, if you've maybe seen that Neil Oliver on TV, Neil Oliver, the man who's more Scottish than Scotland, he's got long hair and he's an archaeologist, so he's quite often in Orkney filming some show or something.
Yeah, right.
So where my wife, back to that. Where my wife grew up on the main street, across the road is St Magnus Cathedral. That was built in 1137.
As you do, 1137. That sounds like a time more than a year.
Yeah,
that's it. Those sorts of dates and stuff, like we don't get that. That doesn't just happen. We don't have that sort of level. We've got eons ago in history, in Aboriginal times, back 25,000 years ago, that sort of stuff, 10,000 years ago, but we don't. Then we've got this gap of not much changing. So it's like I said, 1137. It's smoko, isn't it? Is that what that is?
It's across the road from my mother-in-law's house. It's just weird. You walk past it, and it's a beautiful building. It's massive. It's red brick. It's a stunning building.
Unbelievable.
So you maybe pick up on the name there, Magnus. So Orkney and Shetland were owned by Norway in about 850. I think Norway took them over, and then in 1490, because of a dowry that Norway owed Britain or Scotland, I can't remember. I think they owed Scotland something. So Scotland took it back.
Just trading islands.
Yep. Back.
What does your family own? My family own an archipelago. That's ridiculous.
I mean, I need to get my facts here right, because my members will listen to this, and I need to. I'm pretty sure I'm right. It was about 1490 or something, 1470, something about there. So they were given back to Scotland. Was it a wedding dowry or something like that?
Wow.
So we have a lot of Norse and heritage here in Orkney. So my wife's name's Inga. There's a lot of Magnus, Sigurd,
right,
Earls. Yeah, so a lot of those names still exist, like with kids at school. So a lot of Norse heritage. In Shetland, there's even more Norse heritage up there.
Wow.
So,
and is that like Viking heritage stuff as well? Like, that's what that is, isn't it?
Yep, Viking heritage. So,
wow.
So strong links to North. So going back to the landscape, it's pretty windy, so trees struggle to survive. So there's lots of heather. Most of Orkney, a lot of the land is farmed, so predominantly farming. Barley, wheat, grasses, that sort of stuff. Tarties, potatoes.
Sounds like a conversation, that only brief moment when I had a struggle with Superintendent Fraser Brown from Lake Carrignop, where I had, like you said before, I had to ask Fraser to stop because I couldn't understand a word, and that's just because my head doesn't work with, like you said, when you're not used to hearing that strong accent or even just a normal Scottish accent, right? Fraser lost me, and I was like, "Sorry, mate, I have no idea what you're saying." I imagine, like,
I listened to that podcast, and I was probably the only one who picked up everything he said.
Yeah, Fraser was fantastic. Actually, it was one of the coolest podcast interviews I've done, and they all are. But his was really cool in that different way, and I was really hanging on the edge of what he was. I was like this, and it's audio, right? So you can't see me holding my headphones. So I'm trying to listen, and it's just so astutely to what he was saying because I was battling. But that's the
I felt in a smoko room with two of them going at it, mate. I couldn't understand.
That's what I just. Americans say that about the Australian accent and all that sort of stuff, but they just don't. Yeah.
Yep.
So if you're not used to it, it's like another dialect in a way. It's like the North Queenslanders that talk a little bit different to the rest of us Australians, without being rude to the North. I got family up there, so I can say that up in Innisfail and Cairns, but they got that little twang about some different things. You go, what did you say?
Well, I was from Adelaide. We say things differently, like pool and school and stuff like that. So, like it's funny all around the UK. Like they just, because the country's so old, they all have these little niche accents. So even like in Orkney, you can go to another island and it's different. Like if you know it, you can pick it up and it's different. So all the North Isles like West Street, North Ron, Sandy, Stronsey, they all have their own little dialect. And
it's funny because we're bouncing around sharing things that we've experienced with language. My mechanic at Katoomba was a Swiss. And Wally was he was such a legend of a mechanic, just one of those guys that could do anything. And I think we've all had them in our sheds from time to time. But Wal was Swiss, and I never knew at the time because I'm not worldly travelled, which I don't shy away from telling anybody. And I didn't know that Switzerland didn't have like a specific language. It's made up of all the different parts, all the different countries around Switzerland. That's why it's sort of everyone says Swiss is neutral. But he was telling me that in the different corners that border the other countries is where they've got a different dialect, as it were. So Wally, if he hurt his finger or his hand or bumped something while he's working, the things that he would come out with are just back to his original language, and I'm just laughing my head off. I had no clue what he was saying, and then sometimes I'd sort of ask him the question, and he'd go, well, I say this, but it's not actually what everyone would say in Switzerland. So if you're over here, they would say that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Right. And he would say it's because they have a different dialect. We don't. And yeah, it was really funny. But yeah, what was it? Yeah.
Yep.
The language thing can be really different and interesting to hear in Europe.
Yep. So either the accents, like I could go across, you can get across to the north of Scotland, to Caithness, and their accent sounds different. Yeah, was it about 12 years ago? We were down in Edinburgh and we were going to a Six Nations rugby game. It wasn't Six Nations, sorry. It was the Wallabies versus Scotland at Murrayfield.
Wow.
A bunch of us there. And we were a couple of nights away, and we were having breakfast at the hotel in the morning. And the waitress came across and said, what do you want to order? I said, I'll order this. And my wife ordered. And the lady who was from Edinburgh, she was Scottish. She said, I turned to my wife and she said, I just love your accent. Yeah. I've never been to Wales, but it's just lovely. And my wife's like, that's the Orkney accent. She went, oh, right, so it is.
Wow.
Those things. Yep. So, back to Orkney. So, quite barren landscape, no trees. There's a few forests planted about, lots of heather. Gorse, as I said earlier, but quite barren. And Shetland's even more barren. It's less farmed. I've actually got an Aussie mate up in Shetland. He's from Launceston. So this is going to be another weird story. He went to school with Ricky Ponting.
No, get out of it.
And now he's a lead singer. He's a lead singer in a heavy metal band, and he's got emus and wallabies and all sorts of lizards on his bit of land.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So we get on like a house on fire. So
that's sensational.
Yeah, I'm probably going a bit anyway. So.
No, mate. It's all good. It's all interesting. You mentioned the winds. Are they pretty wild? Tell us a little bit about the differences being so far north of summer and winter, and what it's like trying to look after a golf course therein as well, please.
Yeah. So I'll start on summer. So with the daylight can be brilliant. So with the wind, spraying is a nightmare. Just hard to do. Fortunately, we don't do much. I haven't sprayed a fungicide once. We don't get that humidity, so we don't get much disease. If we get disease, this is one thing I've learned, and I'm really a big fan of, is trying to treat it naturally. Treat it, let it run its course, let it do its thing. Maybe throw a bit of nitrogen at it. Just try and control it. Don't use fungicides. Which is a change from everything I was taught at the courses in Sydney.
Totally.
We were preventative. We were spraying for stem weevil and, mole crickets and dollar spot, obviously the main one in Sydney summers and that sort of stuff, Pythium. So get very little disease, so it makes the job easy. Don't have any shade issues. There's no trees. We've got a few trees coming. There was a few trees planted before I started, a few fir trees, but they're kind of about 10, 15 feet, 20 feet maybe. So no shade issues. Airflow, fantastic. You know? I've got one green. If it's going to get disease, it'll be the 6th, because that's down low and it's kind of tucked away and there's a stone wall. We've all got that one green, don't we? Every course, every greenkeeper I know, like I know the guys down at Royal Dornoch, and even I know Ian Riddle well. And Royal Dornoch, one of the top courses in the world, I think it's in the top 10. And he says, mate, even I've got that one green that just gets disease first. Everyone's got one.
The one problem child that catches everything.
Yeah, so a couple of greens with a few drainage issues. But what we've done over the course is kind of on the side of a hill. It's not hilly, but it's on the side of a hill, so it just slopes. Everything goes across. The water just top to bottom, sheds on the bottom side. So what we've done a lot of the construction I've done, because I get the freedom to build bunkers and that sort of stuff. Yeah, when I say freedom, I liaise with the committee and that sort of stuff. I build them so they're greenkeeper friendly. So, a lot of the old bunkers, the water just ran into them, right? And so you're shoveling sand. I'm just like, we haven't got the crew, we haven't got the time. It's poor design. So when I build a bunker, there's mounding around it, diverting the water around some of the greens. I've built mounding and popped in a couple of drainage pots and ran drainage lines to collect the surface water and that sort of stuff. Side of the hill. Wind blows predominantly down the hill as well, the predominant west wind. So if you're a slicer or a fader, if you're hitting down a fairway and the wind goes that way, forget about it.
Just keeps going. It's a bit like long reef on just one big hill.
Yeah. The wind's a nightmare. Trying to spray can be hard work, trying to get your times, but because of the daylight, I can go out 3 a.m. and spray fairways or something, spray for broadleaf weeds. So it can work in your favour, the daylight, or go back in late at night and do it, or you're trying to get a wetting agent on. So no irrigation, you're working with the rain. So you constantly watching the weather going, when's it raining? So I can go and spray. So if I'm spraying, if I've got to get something in like a wetter, it's like, well, I need no wind, and then I need rain. I'm like, fortunately, we don't quite get the burn because of the heat in Oz. So you can put a wetter on, and I remember in Sydney, someone sprayed a wetter, we used to hand water it in. Had to be right behind that person spraying. Whereas here, I can put it on and make 12 hours. As long as I got rain within 12 hours, I'll be all right.
Wow.
Then I'm not going to get that. Now, summer temps, main summer temps are kind of 15 to about 20.
Summer?
Yeah, so we had a heat wave a couple of years ago. It was like 23, and even I was like, oh, man, this is roasting. My shorts on. Last 2 summers ago, 2023 was the hottest summer I've ever experienced here, and I think we were about 23, 24, and I'm like, oh, man, it's too hot. Let's go on.
Stop it.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and then winter temps, we don't get that cold. We get about 6, 7, 8 degrees. That's just kind of mild. We'll get the cold snap because we get the Gulf Stream coming across the Atlantic from America. That's our kind of main funnel of weather. We'll get that. We'll only really get snow when the whole of the UK gets it. Like the UK will get battered by a storm, or Scotland will get battered by a storm. Because we're at sea level, you've got that constant salt air. So we're not high altitude. So we don't really get a lot of snow given how far north we are. So we get, I've seen us with a foot of snow for 3 weeks, and sometimes it'll snow and then it'll just be, maybe won't get snow for a week, but it just stays really cold, so it doesn't thaw.
Yep.
Other times I've seen it snow, you get a snow shower come in and 20 minutes later and it's gone because it's just thawed. It's weird.
Yeah, wow. Okay, that's interesting. That's just bizarre. You talk about summers like that. It just sounds so interesting that's your hottest temp. Like even the mountains in Sydney, high altitude, where I used to work and grew up, the winters would be cold. Like you said, probably not too dissimilar to that, really. Single figures for the majority of the time, but summers obviously, that's 20 max is it's just crazy to think of a heat wave and it's 20 degrees. That's just wind. Like in Sydney, I find winter is still the same as summer in the mountains. So they don't have winter as far as I'm concerned in Sydney, but
I just call it a warm winter over the summer over here. Just a warm winter.
Yeah, that's it.
Like I got friends back home, like they'll be in Sydney, and they'll be, it's the middle of winter. It's 23 degrees today, and I'm like, mate, it was 15 here, and it was blowing 20 miles an hour, so the wind chill was about 10.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
What's it? Yeah, go on.
Winter. We get the wind chill in winter, so like we can get wind chill. It'll be about -10, I would say. Like if you get kind of a cold snap, it'll be kind of 0, 1 degree, -1 maybe. But then if you get like a 30, 40 mile an hour wind, and it cuts you in half. It's brutal.
Yeah, wow, that's crazy. What's winter like in those dark? I call them dark depths because I think as an Aussie we probably don't appreciate how good our daylight is, how good our lifestyle is because of our climate sometimes. And thinking about some of the stories you've talked about already about the UK and right up there in North, what's winter like getting through that as an Australian? What's it like?
Yeah, pretty brutal. I think the first couple for me when I was over here, it was a bit of a novelty. It's like, cool. Like, hey, what, 4, 5 hours, 6 hours a daylight a day? Oh, that sounds pretty cool. What? And then the summer, you return in the summer. So, wind, cold. I'm like, yeah, cool. Because I used to do a lot of camping, and I used to go camping up the mountains. I used to go in the middle of winter. We used to go up to Nunes and
righto.
And Dun Swamp and that sort of place. I used to go up there all the time.
Yep.
So we used to go in the middle of winter. It's like just get a roaring fire going, and you're right. And you maybe half a case or something like that to keep you warm or whatever. But so it was a bit of a novelty, and I kind of enjoyed it. But then you get after 3 or 4 years, and you're like, this is pretty tedious. So because the job is seasonal over here, my hours get reduced in the winter to 25 hours. I just work 25 hours a week. The summer I work 45 hours a week. So for 6 months I'm 45 hours. 6 months you're paid evenly over the course of the year, so you're not losing out.
Yep.
You're there. I do a lot of overtime, so you get paid for that. But obviously, we try and come home every 2 years. So we've got 2 young kids. We used to come home every 2 years. Come home for Christmas, see family, and so it was a good getaway. Come for a month, maybe have a stopover in Singapore or Dubai or something like that. So but once the kids come along, it's a couple more seats to pay for. It's just cost effective. So. But we all came home last winter. This time last year we were home actually, all 4 of us, and then I was just home. I was fortunate. I was just home just in January and February this year. So I had a family birthday. So so you try and every couple of years get away from it, but it can be tough. Like they do get the blues. You get to about February, and you're like, you know what? I'm sick of this. And by March, I'm just like all my mowers are ready to go, and I'm like, wait. Let's go, come on, I'm ready to go. And then, you spend all summer on a mower, you get to September and you're like, bugger this, I'm looking forward to 25 hours a week and having a bit more time to myself.
Yeah, crazy stuff. Mate, can you tell us a little bit about, because I've, like I mentioned, I've done a little bit of research, and you look like you mentioned it's on the side of a hill. You got nice views across the water from what I can see in some of the photos online. What are the soils like there to grow grass on? And tell us a little bit about your grass types that you're looking after. You mentioned obviously bents and fescues. Is a little bit more detail on where they are on the course.
Yep. So I'll maybe just speak about the history. Let's start with the history of the course. The club's 135 years old last year, 135. So 1889. So it's had a couple of different sites, and it was 9 holes, and blah, blah, blah. I think it's been 18 holes since the early 1900s. A couple of different layouts. The current layout we have now is, I think that was 1973, and that's been the same layout ever since. We're a small site. We're only 5,400 yards, so about 5,000 meters. They're quite short. We've only got 2 par 5s, 5 par 3s, and a lot of kind of par 4s that are similar length. It's driver, wedge.
Par 69.
So, par 69. We were a par 70, but we changed that a couple of years ago when we had Stuart Rennie come in and we rebuilt a couple of greens. The second was a par 5 down the hill, a bit of a dog leg. It was only 470 yards, like so 430 meters, and it was like. So we moved the tee forward 40 yards and made it a long par 4, which we didn't have that. So I think it's 420 now. So that's kind of the history of the course. Good layout, shortish course, but testing. So the grasses we work with over here, predominantly bents and fescues. One thing they do over here a lot is seed tees, reseed tees. Just lash the seed onto the greens. I'm not a big fan of it. I think just because I was taught a different way in Australia, go and scarify, thin it out, but your grass will grow back. Get some nitrogen on. Get everything back in, and it'll be. But over here, they're a huge seed kind of mentality, and I don't disagree with it, but that's the way they do it. I do it differently. I do seed my greens once a year, but I've only just started doing that the last 2 or 3 years. But so what we do, I do a thing called pot seeding. So you can get your seeding machines like your Blacks and your Charterhouses and your Wiedemans and all sorts of stuff. So I do what I call pot seeding. So I put 3/4 inch tine, but I only go like an inch deep. So you just crack the surface. And then we go on the green, we put the seed out through fertilizer spreaders. So just go and blow it out when it's not windy, funnily enough, because otherwise you see the farmers thanking you. So get the seed in, and then top dress, drag mat, or brush it in if you can. And then that just creates that wee bed for the seed to survive and to germinate. And so that seems to be the go over here. That's quite a popular kind of cheaper, if you haven't got the machinery, a cheaper way of getting your seed in. But before that, we just used to aerate solid tine. I haven't cored greens, thatch is low. Because I keep nutrients down, I only feed the greens 4 times a year.
Right.
I keep things low. Like, as I said earlier, like coming from that high-end greenkeeping in Sydney where it's lash it on, I'm just more back the other way, keep it minimalist. That's reflected in the budget. Like we spend about £4,000, about $8,000 a year on all my pesticides and seed. So, $8,000. So, yeah.
Wow, some people spend that a month.
Yeah, I know.
Without being stupid. Sheer size of golf course, that's another big factor in. Like you mentioned, your golf course is quite small. That said, that's mine was probably about the same. We were 5,030 metres as a golf course at Katoomba. That's why I knew it was a par 69 where you were, because we're the same. But size is obviously reflects on budget, and $8,000 a year. I mean, wow.
Yeah, about that. So we, so that's taught me to be, minimalist, and you've got no choice. You just have to be, and you've just got to pick your times. And then when you're going with the weather, you're relying on rain or wind or no wind. One thing I say to myself is I think a lot of greenkeepers who maybe come up through that system of the high-end courses, they need to go and experience that lower end to really get a feel for what you can achieve with very little. Because what we do achieve, and you've maybe seen some aerial shots of my course and some drone photos and that sort of stuff. And I think what we produce is fantastic for what we have, for the resources we have. We have no mechanics, so we've got to do it all ourselves. I rely on 1 or 2 folk to come and help, like with the mechanics. If I plead and beg and borrow and steal. Minimalist staff, casual staff. Members coming out to help lay turf. It's just I wish I had done it when I was younger, because it would have given me a better feel for what I've got now. But it's not the end of the world. I love what I do, and I love that end of greenkeeping. It teaches you to be resourceful, and living on an island, you have to be resourceful for what you have here. I can wait 2 weeks for a part in the middle of summer just to get up here, and I can be phoned that day. Right, I need this belt. I learned. Like, I was 30 when I took over here, and I learned over a couple of seasons, and I was like, what, I maybe better. We had stock, we had parts, but I'm like, right, I just need to keep belts and cables and that stuff that's going to snap in the middle of summer. Belts you can get locally most of the time, but, there's that odd belt or someone's built that no one else has in stock, and it's that certain size or that certain screw or bolt or nut, and you're like, right, only they sell it, right, I've got to get it from them. But hydraulic hoses and that sort of stuff we can get locally. I just whip one off and take it down to the local place. Fortunately, I've got the industrial estate's like half a mile from the course, so you just jump in the pickup, jump in the ute, and away you go. So you've got to be resourceful.
Do you
when you're waiting on stuff?
Do you think that, and hearing that part of the way that you work now and being resourceful, you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have all the gear, you don't have a shed full of everything, and that's reflective of the size of the club and the membership and where you are. Do you think that makes you a more, and maybe you've already said that, a more well-rounded greenkeeper in the way that you can think about problem solving and managing the golf course? Because and the only reason I say that is because you said like it's good experience for people to have gone and worked in a place like that. I managed a golf course very similar to what you're suggesting that you're doing now. We had all of the same similar things that you've got there that we don't have and that we didn't have. Do you think that that's a good experience thing for people to have under their belt as they become a more experienced greenkeeper through their career?
100%. Yeah, 100%. I don't doubt that. Having gone up through, I remember like when I was working in Sydney, and you'd go and play like the local, municipal course, council course, whatever. I won't name courses, but you go and play with your pals and have a few beers and have a laugh. And I remember going around going, geez, why isn't that's untidy? Why isn't that done? That's crap. Like, and I felt like, I look back now, what a kid. What was I thinking? You don't know the background of that course, that there's only two staff who are free staff, and you just, it opens your eyes, I think, being at this level, as to what you can achieve with what you've got. And you don't become so wasteful with stuff. I don't know. It's, I listened to your podcast with Tim Warren.
Yep.
Is it Tim from Glenelg?
Glenelg, yep.
I was supposed to play there when I was in Adelaide last month, but as a long story, I stuffed up. But I listened to his, and he's kind of done it in the opposite to me. He started those little country courses and worked his way up to Glenelg. And I think those skills that he would have developed at those courses has helped him massively. Like, so we do all our own cylinder grinding. So when I started, the only time I went into the mechanics section at Concord or Pennant or wherever, it was like, oh, this is broken. Can you come and fix it? Like, And then you work. One thing I look back now and it's like, I wish I had have asked to spend a bit of time with a mechanic to learn a few things. So I've had to learn off my back how to cylinder grind. Fortunately, the guy I know, we're the only one with the grinder in Orkney. The guy, my second day on the job, and the guy was up servicing the machine. He's from England. And so then he did the day's training the day after, my third day on the job. So I'm literally into this job, right? So I started at Orkney Golf Club. It was February. The head greenkeeper, he was gone. There was no other staff. There was just an old boy who worked casual. He does a bit of painting and he's a bit of a handyman. He helped me a bit, but there was no diary. There was no record of what had ever been done. So I literally had
nothing.
Never been a greenkeeper in Scotland. I didn't know anyone.
Wow.
It was like having 4 blindfolds on. Like, it was just like, what am I going to do? So I had to learn mechanics. So, and I am, like, even to this day, I am not a mechanic. I am hopeless. Like, check a dipstick, change an air filter, change the oil. So I had to learn. So I've had to, changing bearings and rollers and stuff like that, and YouTube a video and how do you do that. So I'm in a couple of mechanics WhatsApp chats, and you're like, guys, I don't want to sound stupid, but what's going on here, and you know what, everyone's really good. Yeah, that's what I love about this industry is everyone supports one another. Everyone wants to help, or like the mechanics in you. So you've got to be honest at the start, saying, guys, look, I'm not a mechanic, but I've got this issue. What can I do? And then they come with like their mechanic jargon, and you're like, mate, I don't know what that means. Like, you dumb it down a bit for me, like, layman's. But I think, for young greenkeepers out there, if I could say one thing, either pester your boss to go and hang out with your mechanic in the winter when you've got time to learn some new skills, because you never know where you're going to end up. I never thought I would end up here. I didn't know where I would end up, but I wish I had have when I was younger was get into that mechanic side. I didn't in my own personal life. I come from a very white collar family. Like, my dad was a bank manager, mum is a cleric. My siblings are in computers and finance, and my sister's a dietitian. So I'm kind of that blue collar. I didn't grow up with hanging around. But Dad was great in the garden, and I'd be in the garden and cleaning pools and washing cars and that sort of stuff. But I never got exposed as some kids do. I wasn't that lucky, but I was lucky in other.
Yeah, for sure. But I agree with you. I'm big on that sort of learning because that's how we worked. Like I said, Wally was our mechanic, our Swiss guy, but he was only on call. He was an NRMA roadside mechanic. So if we couldn't get Wall in, like we didn't have full-time mechanics. So if we couldn't get Wall in, we had to deal with it. Like we had to, and I got that experience through my time as an apprentice as well, because Wally happened to be the mechanic at the other golf course I grew up at Wentworth Falls. So it was, you're bearing, doing roller bearings, cylinder bearings, getting all your bottom blades done, doing oil changes, you're doing hydraulic stuff, putting hoses on, and it didn't matter. You had to, because you have to be resourceful at Katoomba. And like I said, it sounds very similar to Orkney, which is quite nice, actually, because I haven't interviewed too many people that are from clubs that are of a similar size to what I had at Katoomba. But, one of the things I remember that we used to do, because we get a lot of drizzle in the mountains, and I'm not sure whether it's a similar, you don't get a lot of rain at Orkney, but it might be the same. We knew that drizzle would only ever amount to like 1 mil, 2 mil of rain. And if you needed it in summertime, if you had to wash in a pesticide or something to get deep down into the roots, or a fungicide for a root-borne disease, soil-borne disease, whatever it might have been, you had to just wash it off a leaf and get it in. And you might need 3 or 4 mil of rain or whatever it is equivalent in irrigation. We didn't have an irrigation system. So we had hoses and knockers, which is a wasteful of water unless you're watering for the hot temperatures. But if you're watering something in that's only on your greens, for us, we would get out there and use that 1 mil of drizzle that would break the surface tension on the greens, and it'd start to wash it off a leaf, and then we'd add the extra water to go through it. And I had members and GMs come up to us and say, "Why are you watering the greens in the rain?" And it was being resourceful, because we were leveraging from the 1 mil that we were getting, knowing what it was going to do, and that's all it ever would be, and adding the little bit extra, so we didn't have to do it in the heat. The temperature was right. It was all those things. And you've got to think outside the box. And that's what I love doing. I really like thinking outside the box and doing things that people think you can't do unless you've got all the tools or all the infrastructure or all the labour or all the equipment. And that means that you're able to do things, but you do it differently. And people sometimes look at you sideways and go, "What is it that you're up to?" So, well, this works. We've found a way that we can do some of these things that have never been done before, and you sort of lean on some of the experienced people, like you said. You got some old mates that's been around in the course for a while, or you get that little bit of knowledge from them, and you go, "What is it here that works? Can we use that in a different way to our advantage to get this job done?" And I think that's a really big thing, because I've even spoken to young greenkeepers or even qualified greenkeepers now that have, like you said, zero experience on machine maintenance, or zero experience in trying to... What happens if your irrigation system goes down for a period of time? It might not be in the peak of summer, but if you're spraying, like you said, and you've got to wash something in, how do you think outside the box? And even those repair things, I think that's an invaluable set of experience that we've kind of glossed over a little bit, and we get that pressure from clubs and membership to stay on. And I think some of our clubs need to try and think around getting that experience from within. Like you said, have the apprentices spend a bit of time with a mechanic in the quieter time of the year. And I think that's a great concept. And I'm sure there's clubs that do that, but I think more need to, and not let them. No, it's really an extra cool set of skills to be able to think differently. Personal thought.
Yeah, for sure. Just going back, you were asking about the soil types and that sort of stuff at the course. Going back to the grasses, we predominantly bents fescues across the way, bit of meadowy grass. No, I'm fortunate I don't get too much power in the greens. Like the UK, it's quite a big fight the power, obviously, and try and blast out the seed head and brush it and get the seed head up and verticut and whatnot. I'm fortunate we don't. I think Orkney's too brutal. Power can't survive. This is a joke. It's even it doesn't like Orkney, but we're fortunate we don't suffer too much. So our greens stay pretty true. And so one thing over here they do differently. Well, maybe parkland courses are different, but links courses by the sea with the wind, the heights are different. So I cut my greens. Well, I'm cutting at 4.2 mil is about the lowest I'll go. And we cut with pedestrian, so unfortunately the green's quite small, so we're about 7,000 squares. Two hand mowers and two folk go around in the buggy trailer. around in the Workman, and most places there's 2 greens, so you can just park and one person take one green, one take the other. I think only 3 greens we have to cut that you've got to share it, cut half and half. So cut with hand mowers, and keep your nutrients down. You're not overfeeding, so there's a lot of grass there. There's not a lot of growth. So and then we've just invested in a roller a couple of years ago, so that's made a difference. So that allows me to break up that kind of cutting cycle, so we can. You can take a day off from mowing, leave a bit more leaf there for photosynthesis, and then you can roll instead. So we keep the height quite high, 4.2 for even like Royal Dornoch. I know down I might not say the height they cut at, but they're similar to me, and that's one of the best courses in the world. And they just are able to produce that magnificent surface. That the greens, I've played it a couple of times, and it's just a magnificent surface. We're not down, like you tell people over here, I've cut at 2.7, 2.8, and they're like, you're what? Like, no. And even like my first season here, and I was dropping it down to about 3.8, and I'd get caught out with a wind, and Saturday afternoon, your medal's on, and the wind picks up, and all of a sudden we had 2 greens, the first and the third, and those greens went with the lay of the land. They were that old that they just float. There was no surrounds, there was no nothing, there was no... So I'll get on to, we rebuilt those 2 greens 2020. So we had Stuart Rennie, the architect, come in. As I said earlier, he used to work for Peter Thompson, now set himself up over here. He's Scottish. He's originally Scottish. So we enlisted him, and this was all to do with the Island Games. So the Island Games coming in this year. Orkney's hosting the Island Games, 13 sports, biggest multi-sport event in Europe, I think, this year. It's all amateur, so golf's one of those 13 sports. So this is the thing we've been leading into for about 7 years. COVID knocked it back by 2 years. Wow. It was supposed to be in 2023. So we've got, Orkney's going to be inundated with tourists and competitors and that for a week. So quite a big thing, biggest thing the club's ever going to host. So
that's huge.
So about 7-8 years ago, I got in touch with Stuart. Stuart came up, did a master plan for us, and they play 2 courses. The other course is Strongness. So did a master plan for the 2 courses. Not a master plan as such as rebuild every green. And it was more, what do you guys want? This is what we want. We know the first and the third greens could be a problem. So if the wind gets up, we've got these international competitors. We could be embarrassed. Blah, blah, blah. So we rebuilt those greens. This is a story. So we rebuilt those 2 greens. The first and the third, they're kind of nearby. Not just the greens, all the surrounds, everything, all the banks, the bunkers. 3 bunkers built in that as well. The second tee, which, as I was saying earlier, was moved. We rebuilt the second tee. We did all that in 3 weeks with the green staff. We had a member who has a civil contracting company, so he lent us a excavator, 8-ton excavator, and a 6-ton dumper and a man for 3 weeks to help us get that achieved. And we had members come in. So we used all the existing turf from the site. So the whole site, 5,000 squares for the 2 jobs. We stripped it all with a hand turf cutter, stripped it all. Members came in. We had about 25 members come in on a Sunday afternoon, rolled it all up, kept the greens turf separate, obviously, then put all the surrounds turf separate, and then rotivated the whole site because of my time in construction. So I went back in 2017, 2018, and I actually worked on the Doak rebuild at Concord. So I went back I went back for 5 months. Mark asked me to come back, so I worked on that for 5 months, left my job here, and lived in Sydney for 5 months. And so more skills picked up there. So we rebuilt these greens, all the surrounds. Stuart came up, worked for a week with us as well. And then so we kept all the green soil separate, kept that completely its own site. So stripped it all, shaped the sub base. So the soil here is just kind of a good kind of loamy topsoil.
Okay.
But then about 200 mil down, shaly rock. So it actually, now that I've started punching it with a vertidrain, the course with a vertidrain, and the water gets into the rock and drains away, it still becomes quite boggy. The topsoil can stay boggy, but the course is 140 years, 135 years old. Golf's been played on it, machines. It's just compacted in some areas. It's so hard. It's so hard to grow some areas. So we rebuilt these greens, and then we put all the turf back. So all the greens turf went back on the greens. and then we put all the turf back on the surrounds, and then we own a field about 25 acres right next to the 8th hole. So back in about 2015, we actually fenced about 5,000 square metres off, and that's our turf nursery. So
wow.
Once again, keeping our resources down, carbon footprint, blah, 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 blah. Keeping all that down, we were having to get turf. There is a turf farm on Orkney, but they couldn't supply us with the amount we need. It's just more domestic stuff. So we were getting our turf from Aberdeenshire. So a couple of pallets on a ferry, sitting there. A couple of times I got it, and the turf was just cooked. You're rolling it out, it's just steaming and sticking. So I just went, this isn't viable. So, yeah, the club conceived this plan. And, yeah, we fenced off and reseeded it. And I think I'm on my third harvest off that. So
yeah, wow, that's good.
Done a lot of turfing. So it saves the club a fortune, and it allows us to do these projects. So we only needed about 200 or 300 square metres off that to finish the project. I think we ran short. So other than that, everything else was just rolled up and put to the side. We laid out the greens turf, laid it out on tarpaulins and mats, and so it was still getting the daylight, and the roots weren't setting, so the roots weren't going anywhere. And then relayed that on the greens. We finished the first, and then the third was kind of pretty much half constructed as well. Focused back on the third. But by that point, some of the turf was getting the surrounds turf that had been rolled up for 2 weeks, and I was like, "Oh Jesus!" So we start rolling it out I'm down on the 5th hole, and just to get it out. So I had to get members in to come and roll that out for me, and then we had to roll it up again to put it back on. And mate, I've got photos of that turf just like straw yellow, and I'm just like, it's shrinking, and there's gaps, and I'm just like, "Oh Jesus!" I'm watering it with a water tank, and I'm like, this couldn't be so far more removed from water on a Saturday afternoon at Concord. It was just like, you look back and it makes you stronger. It makes you more resourceful. It really teaches you a lot, I think.
Absolutely, mate. That's full on. And those games, what were the games again? Sorry, what were they called? The ones that you've been working.
The International Island Games. So it's the 40th anniversary. They're held every 2 years, I think. So it's islands. So Orkney's in them, Shetland's in them. So it's worldwide, but it's predominantly, I think it's more kind of ex-British Empire type locations. So Isle of Man's in it, Jersey, Guernsey, the Falkland Islands are in it. There's one called Gotland in Sweden, Rhodes in Greece. And then there's a few off Wales, the Faroe Islands, which are further north than us. That's just to name a few. I can't think of them.
That's pretty exciting, mate, that you got something like that coming up for your, like you said, I suppose your small club, but it's still a well-known club in the area. That's impressive. Something to look forward to. Certainly, you've been working hard at it.
Yeah, but I think Bermuda's in there too. So, like, some of our members go off to play at it. So Bermuda, you're getting these plush, resort-style courses that we probably see on telly at the USPGA and on the tour there. And the ones down in Jersey and Guernsey are quite good. So we're certainly at the lower end when they get here, but we're just going to produce the best quality course we can. And same with Stromness, that golf course, they're a part of it as well.
Hearing you talk about being resourceful again, and I go back to this part of it, do you think... maybe this is why, hearing you talk about it from a greenkeeping perspective, maybe this is why, from an Australian point of view, we hear a lot of people with British experience and they're from the UK that talk about golf differently to what we talk about, is the landscape and the climate and the way that you maintain your golf course. Like you say, it ebbs and flows. You don't have the irrigation infrastructure. I'm sure there's other golf courses. There's plenty of other smaller clubs around, no doubt, that are a similar boat, where you have to roll with what Mother Nature delivers, and you don't fight against that, and it changes how you manage your turf. You spray for different things. You sort of roll along with everything a lot more and manage the property with bare minimum inputs. Is that why we hear a lot of people from Scotland that talk about Australia and they say, or they talk about the American style of a golf course is that it's too lush. It's greens are soft greens. It's like hearing you talking about using you don't water that much because you don't need to, but then that naturally firms things up. That's why golf is different over there a little bit. Is that a lot of the reasons why? Because we over here, people, if you don't have an irrigation system, people look at you like you got two heads. Like what's with that? Whereas it's probably I'm guessing a lot more normalized in a way. I'm guessing. Is that kind of why? Do you think?
Yeah, I think so. I think I touched on it earlier about how the course changes. Like at the start of the season, April, and you can pitch it and fly it at the pin, but by June, July, you're playing the 7-iron from 100 yards out, bumping and running it, and because if you try and carry it, like I was playing one competition, and par 3 down. We've got 14th par 3 down the hill. It's about 220 yards, so it's about 200 meters down the hill. I won't tell you what I hit because I'm a rubbish golfer. Anyway, teed off and landed on the apron, and it pinged and bounced over the green and went through to the long rough at the back. It missed the green completely. It was on target, but I landed on the apron.
Now,
I'd hit too far.
People in Australia, you tell that story here, and people would say the greenkeeping's done all wrong. I know plenty of golfers that would say that's not being looked after properly. It's not being watered well. That's not okay. That's not golf. So, that inherently, that's what I'm saying. Is that really more of why people who come from the UK come over here and they're just like, you guys do it so different in that way, preparing golf courses, and some of it's our climate because it's so hot. We've got to water regularly.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit of it.
The golfer, for someone to say, "Oh, that's not the way it should be," or the golfer has to be smart enough to adapt to the conditions they've got. If it's windy, keep the ball out of the winds. If it's soft, fly to the pin. If it's hard, don't fly to the pin. Like,
stop being logical, Chris. Stop talking about reacting to what's in front of you, and you're meant to react to what's meant to be delivered in your mind.
Yeah, and that's the one thing I love about the level that I'm at, and the UK style. Like, I've played a few courses in the last couple of years down on the mainland of Scotland, and you just adapt to how they're doing it, to that course is doing it. And I've played some top courses, and what I love now is going to play the courses where it's £20 a round, and that 20 quid is going somewhere. Whereas if I play the top end courses, mate, I'm phoning up the greenkeeper and going, can I, how's that? Can I get a game? You're teeing off at 6 o'clock at night. That's the best I can do for you. But the golfer has to adapt, and that's what. Going back to my course, they adapt, and they just get what's laid out in front of them. They know we can't flood the greens and make them soft, and to me that makes an all-round better golfer. Like, I read a lot about. And you probably know yourself, like the Aussie golfers, like the guys from the Sandbelt, like Ogilvy and those sort of guys that have gone over to the US, and they're like, they've ruined my game. I had so many shots in the bag, playing the Sandbelt as a kid and, as a younger golfer, and then they go to America and it's just this pitch and the putt and I just get frustrated watching golf on TV now. Like, unless it's like an open or it's a course that's not wacky, but a course that's more traditional. A traditional course, how golf evolved. Golf evolved from a natural piece of land, and you would just, a bunker was a rabbit scraping. That's good. Try and get it. But bad luck. Don't hit it there. Like
luck.
But now they're in a fairway bunker and they're smashing 3 wood to 2 feet.
You talk about luck, and I like to talk about chance, and that's an inherent part of the game in my view. And I think we try to make, through pressures from people's opinions and what they want to be delivered. Hey, you're a member, you're paying money, you want it to be delivered a certain way. I kind of understand that mentality as well, but at the same time, I think as greenkeepers, as turf managers, it's also incumbent on us to sort of retain, and architects do that very, very well, is to retain some of the key inherent parts of the traditional side of the game, because that is the sport in general. I think that's a key part of it, and that's my opinion of it, but I think it aligns a lot with what it's like over in the British Isles, where in Scotland the sport it began and it came from and it evolved. Mate, I'm conscious of how much time I'm taking up of yours, and we've gone down so many great rabbit holes.
It's nine. here at night. That's all right. Yeah.
and I hope people are still enjoying it. So if you're still with us, we've gone down plenty of rabbit holes. What it's like up in Orkney. Mate, you touched on a couple of things, and I'd like to just clear it up if we can, in terms of the size, because hopefully people over there in Scotland and in Orkney will listen to this a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit? You mentioned it's mostly you and I think you said one other, some casuals and a lot of volunteer help looking after the course. Can you detail that for us a little bit better?
Yeah, so I've had in my time at the club. When I started, I just had two or three summer casuals that uni students. Or school kids, and then generally one or two kind of retired guys who'd come and help in that rake bunkers or divot tees and move tee markers, cut greens, because we use pedestrians, that sort of stuff. And then I had an apprentice, Fergus. I had Fergus for about 5 years, put him through his time. But he went on to other things. He's still in Orkney, but he's doing other things.
Yep.
And then still relied. I had Fergus, and then still relied on one or two summer casuals as well. Had another young guy, Sam, who was a really smart kid. He was studying mechanical engineering, and grew up around farms. So mate, was pretty knacky-handed. He taught me mechanics. It was good. Can you fix it? No worries. Nothing that a packet of zip ties can't fix. And then the last 2 years we've had Laura Sayer Hall, who's a qualified greenkeeper. She worked at Ardfin, which is a private golf estate on Jura.
Harrison Design. That's another story.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a guy called Greg Coffey, an Aussie hedge fund billionaire, that had Bob Harrison,
Scott champion from Harrison Golf. Yep.
Anyway, so she was living on the island at the time, so she ended up getting into greenkeeping at the age of 32 or something. And then she was back down at Wallasey, which is the home of Stableford near Hoy Lake, Royal Liverpool. Then she went to work at New South Wales, and then that's just through the power of Twitter. We followed each other, and she was travelling Scotland in a camper van and asked to see if there's any work for a couple of months. And she ended up staying, but but this was us just trying to lead into the island games, having a consistent crew that we could kind of keep it going. But and then I've got one or two volunteers and Shona, this was funny last year. Laura took up golf just by coming into greenkeeping. So her handicaps, she's quite a high handicap. And then so the other lady we have on our team, Shona, she's ex-club 25 or 27-time club champion. Just recently retired from the council. So she volunteers on the course, works with us, cleans machines and bunkers and all that sort of stuff. So she's a great help. Ladies Club Championship week, she won the gross section. Shona won the gross, and Laura won the net section club championship. So I had the two club champions on the greens team. It was, I think, with me and the other guy, Malky, we were letting the team down. But in the men's department, we were rubbish.
That's gold. That's gold, mate. That's great to hear about your team there working towards the Island Games, which is brilliant. What have you got a favourite spot on the golf course that's your own personal favourite anywhere on the site?
Yeah. Down at the seventh tee, sixth green, low part of the course. There's a burn in front of the green, which we rebuilt a couple of years ago, naturalised it, and looks really good. There's a lot of gorse and heather down there. So the gorse flowers in May, the heather flowers in kind of August. So it kind of there's a long rough. There's a couple of sycamore trees behind the tee. Par 3, seventh's a par 3 up the hill. That's about 150 yards, but big bunker at the front guarding it. Then two kind of hairy, kind of long grassy mounds next to the green. So it's a tough par 3. You've got to hit over the burn, over the gorse, over the long rough. That's another thing. Like you talk about, it's a great part of the course. My favourite part, But growing up in Australia, greenkeeping, long grass, and you're like, oh, geez, chop it down. Mate, in Britain, and even now to an extent in Australia with a lot of your barnbougles and your Kate Wickhams and stuff like that, your long grasses they're beautiful. They're absolutely lovely. So
it makes a world of difference in the contrast and the different textures and things that are in your eye. And I think it's brilliant. I think we're getting better at using it better in Australia, no doubt about it. But you have to send me some photos of that stuff so I can share some of that around. So when people are listening to this, they'll be able to see. Send me a couple of photos from that area if you can on the course. Would be nice to share on socials.
Yep.
Looking. Before we head off, mate, I'd like you to detail, because like I mentioned at the start, you've been to Australia recently. Can you tell us what the trip is like to get from where you live in Orkney to Sydney? How do you go about that? What's involved and how long will that take you?
Right, it's a couple of ways. You can either drive or fly. We usually fly. Fly from here direct to Edinburgh. Depending on the flight times, I might have to have an overnight stay at the airport hotel in Edinburgh, which we did last time with the kids, because our flight was at 7 a.m. I think there's only 3 flights a day to Edinburgh from here. So, a night at the airport hotel and then early flight. Normally, depends who we fly with. We don't have to go to London, fortunately. We used to have to, but now out of Scotland, you've got Emirates, Qatar, and Etihad aren't anymore, I don't think. Yeah, just Emirates and Qatar, I think, are the only 2 now. So we flew with Qatar. So Edinburgh, Doha, Sydney. So it's not that bad.
Oh, okay.
I think I've done it 20 times now. I've done that many trips.
Yeah, right.
It's, 20 return and 10 return trips. I think I've done 10.
Yep.
Probably 12 trips. The weirdest one I had about 10 years ago. My grandma passed away, and it was short notice, middle of the summer here, so I had to get home for her funeral. And the only way I could get, because it was the start of the summer holidays in the UK, or the flight, I couldn't get a seat, so I ended up going via Canada. And it was like Sydney, Edinburgh to London, London to Vancouver. Then I had a 15-hour layover in Vancouver. But fortunately, a guy I used to play cricket with in Sydney, up at West Pennant Hills, he lived in Vancouver. So he said, "Yeah, mate, no worries, I'll come pick you up from the airport." So I'm up this mountain looking at grizzly bears and all sorts of stuff, sitting, having a few beers, jump back on the plane, and passed out in no time for the 15-hour flight from Vancouver. That was the weirdest.
That's wild. It's not local. It's not local, which is, it's interesting to hear that sort of stuff, mate. And one final one, you mentioned, and I know you touched on it before, and like I've said, I've done my research. The age of the club interests me. 1889, you said. Now, I've had a look and done a little bit of comparison. There is only one other golf club in Australia that's older than that, and that's the Australian.
Yes, is it?
Only one, because Royal Melbourne was just after it in 1890, 91 or something along those lines. But the Australian was 1882, and that's the only golf club in our entire country that's older than yours. And yours isn't really that old in the UK comparison.
No, Royal Dornoch, they clicked over 400 years a couple of years ago.
That's staggering. Mate, Chris, there is a great deal of information there in your story, mate. And what a career you've had, going from some of the great top-end courses in Sydney of Pennant Hills, Concord and New South Wales and the like, over to the UK and working in castles and doing also, no cab rollers on roads in freezing conditions to now looking after a golf course that's older than 99.9% of the golf courses in Australia, mate. It's a hell of a story, and I really appreciate you saying it like the way that you did and detailed it for us, because it sounds unreal. It sounds like you're passionate about looking after a place like that over there in Orkney in the UK, and what you're delivering, your skill set that you're bringing to them with your experience in construction and what you're able to do, and preparing the golf course and the club for the Island Games, mate, sounds very, very impressive. So I really appreciate you detailing all that for us, mate, and I look forward to sharing some of your photos if I can, if you can send them through. And showcasing a little bit more of Orkney to the Aussies with an expat who's superintendent there. So, mate, congratulations on your career. And, mate, I wish you all the best moving forward. And it sounds like you're really enjoying your time at Orkney and continue to do so, which is great.
Yeah. Yeah, no, thanks very much. Thanks for having me on. And I'm just glad to get a story out there that's a bit left of field, really. And, yeah, it's fine to tell it. And, it's just a great industry. We all speak about it as greenkeepers. Like, I know yourself, you've not been a greenkeeper for a few years, but you're still in the industry and still have the passion for it, and that's what I love. And I go on holiday. Like my first holiday in Scotland, I went camped down the west coast with my wife, and I just went and visited golf courses. I didn't play them.
Yep.
I just went to Macrahanish and all these top courses. Just because we're passionate. And go on holiday, and I want to play as many different courses as I want and see, and go and play the bottom end courses and go and see what they have. And young greenkeepers, get out there. Don't always want to play the top courses or work at the top courses. Just get out there and enjoy it. And,
Mate, great words. Very, very good words, and hopefully a lot of people pick up on that stuff. And again, mate, like I say, congratulations on your career and what you're doing over at Orkney, and I really appreciate you coming on the pod, mate. It's late at the night there and in the morning here, and mate, it's been wonderful to chat with you, Chris, and thank you so much for being on Keeper of the Greens.
Yep, no worries. Thanks for having me on, Steve. Thanks very much, and good luck with all the rest of your shows and the podcast. And you're doing a great job getting our story out there. I love it.
Ladies and gentlemen, Superintendent Chris Ray, what a yarn, what a fantastic individual. Hasn't he got some experience, and how good is that, listening to what is involved in looking after a golf course on the very unique Orkney Islands in the far north of Scotland. Very special part of the world. Now, there's going to be lots of clickables in the show notes here, but I have to thank Chris for his time, the endurance of the 2 years or so it's taken us to get on the podcast together. Thank you, Chris, and I really appreciate your insight, mate, and I think you guys out there listening, guys and girls, obviously, I know I got a lot out of it, and I'm sure you did as well. Very, very unique, and if anyone's been there to Orkney, to the Orkney Islands, and has experienced it, shout out and let me know. Get in touch with me on my socials, on the Golfing Greenkeeper, on Instagram and Facebook, or feel free to send me an email at thegolfinggreenkeeper@gmail.com. And like I said, just really interesting to hear the details of what it's like looking after a golf course over there in a unique part of the world. And coming from Australia, the differences in doing something like that was really interesting to hear. And of course, they're prepping the course at the moment for the International Island Games there, which is something special. Now, I'm going to have a few. Chris has sent me a number of photos, so I'm going to put some stuff up on my social media. If you want to check out the course, obviously you can go and there's going to be lots of clickables, but follow me on the socials because I'm going to put some of those photos up that Chris has shared with me that I can share with you, which is brilliant. So, and it'll give you an idea of the golf course as well. Fantastic stuff. It really does look incredibly fantastic, and something, like I say, I keep saying it's so different to what we're used to here in Australia. Don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, to check out all the clickables in the show notes, and also please give me a rating if you wouldn't mind. I would love a good updated rating. Haven't had any updated ratings for a little bit, and we're bouncing back. We've been back into the top 10 in Australian golf podcasts as well just recently. So we're obviously getting around. Lots of people are listening and continue to do so. So thank you to everyone for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Pass it around, ladies and gentlemen, to friends, family, anyone you know who might be interested in learning more about golf courses around the country, and also about greenkeeping and about architecture and all sorts of different things that are involved in behind the scenes of what it takes to deliver a golf course to you and me out there, everyone who enjoys playing golf. And don't forget to check out deere.com.au, this wonderful partnership I've got with John Deere Golf, DEERE.com.au. I'll leave you with it for this episode number 110. You hit 'em clean, we'll keep 'em green, and I'll catch up with you very soon.